So have you ever finally achieved this massive goal, or maybe you survived a really grueling trial only to feel utterly depleted instead of triumphant?
Oh, yeah. It is a profound and honestly surprisingly common paradox.
Right. You cross the finish line. Maybe it's, launching a business or getting through a brutal medical treatment or finally getting that degree.
And you think you were going to be thrilled.
Exactly. But instead of throwing your hands up in victory, you just want to collapse in a dark room.
Yeah.
Like you did it, but you feel completely, inexplicably empty.
Well, we always expect euphoria, but our nervous systems often just deliver utter exhaustion. And understanding why that happens means taking a really hard look at what it actually costs us to simply survive.
Because survival is rarely free.
No, it is not. Not at all.
And that brings us to the mission of today's deep dive. We are exploring this fascinating stack of materials from Dr. Delisa Rodgers.
It is a great collection of sources.
It really is. We've got a YouTube teaching transcript, a 4-week study guide, a webinar manual, and a set of these daily affirmations.
And all of this material sits right at this incredibly profound intersection of trauma-informed psychology and biblical theology.
Right, and the goal here is to look at the hidden costs of survival, like how trauma actually physically alters us and how we can break these generational cycles of pain.
What is so fascinating right out of the gate is the core framework Dr. Rodgers uses to open her webinar.
The two different theologies.
Yeah. She draws this very sharp contrast between what she calls triumph-only theology and trauma-informed faith.
So triumph-only theology, that celebrates the breakthrough.
Exactly. It celebrates the miracle, the victory, the big win, but it completely shames the ongoing struggle.
Like, you survived, so why are you complaining?
Right. It's a mindset that basically says, you were delivered, so why are you still crying? Just move on.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because when I was reading through the study guide, the best analogy I could think of is a terrible car crash.
Oh, that is a perfect way to look at it.
Right, because triumph-only theology is like throwing this massive balloons and confetti party to celebrate surviving the crash.
Which is a great thing to celebrate, obviously.
Oh, definitely. But then it completely ignores the fact that you still need, like, 6 months of intensive, really painful physical therapy just to walk again.
It treats mere survival as the actual finish line.
Yes.
Hmm.
But Dr. Rodgers makes this really powerful argument that, yes, God honors obedience, but healing is still absolutely required.
Deliverance pulls you out of the wreckage, but healing is what treats the injuries.
Wow.
And if we want to understand the historical and generational roots of this trauma, the webinar suggests we first need to look at the immediate present-day symptoms of burnout.
The kind of burnout that so many of you listening probably experience on a daily basis.
Exactly. Dr. Rodgers uses this specific phrase, Jezebel exhaustion, to describe a relentless psychological warfare that drives people into deep isolation.
Right, and to illustrate this, the teaching transcript references what they call Hotel One Kings 19-point man.
Which is such an interesting name for it.
It really is. It's a reference to the story of the prophet Elijah. So he has this massive, spectacular victory on Mount Carmel, right?
Defeating his enemies, totally vindicated.
Yeah. And what does he do right after? He literally runs away, hides in a cave, completely exhausted, and complains, "I am the only one left."
Right after his biggest career win.
I mean, he feels entirely alone and literally suicidal. How does that even happen?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the neuroscience behind Elijah's cave is incredible, and it applies to anyone who has pushed themselves to the absolute brink.
So what is actually happening in the brain?
When you are under that kind of prolonged psychological stress, your amygdala, which is the emotional threat detecting center of your brain, senses danger and just goes into overdrive.
Like a smoke detector.
Exactly like a smoke detector that won't turn off. It is constantly scanning the room, scanning your emails, your relationships for potential threats.
So you're basically stuck in fight or flight mode.
Precisely.
Right.
And here is where it gets so much worse. While your amygdala is screaming, your prefrontal cortex, which is the logical, reasoning, problem-solving part of your brain, basically gets starved of blood flow.
Wait, it just goes offline?
It goes completely offline. Your cortisol, the stress hormone, spikes. So when Elijah, or, you, collapse after a big trial, this isn't just feeling a little sleepy.
It is true physiological fatigue.
Yes, true physical and emotional fatigue. Your brain chemistry is entirely out of balance.
Okay, But let me push back on this for just a second, because honestly, when I'm burnt out, a dark cave sounds amazing.
Sure it does.
Isn't isolation sometimes completely necessary, like taking a step back to breathe and just shut the loud world out for a minute?
It is.
So when does a healthy retreat for rest
Mhm.
turn into this trauma-driven withdrawal that the study guide is warning us about?
That is a crucial distinction we have to make. A healthy retreat restores you. It brings your nervous system back to baseline.
So you emerge feeling capable again.
Right. Trauma-driven withdrawal, on the other hand, drains you further into hopelessness. The webinar points out that isolation intensifies your emotions because you have no buffer.
You don't have anyone to ground you.
Exactly. You don't have a trusted friend to offer perspective. So your reality distorts. You start believing lies.
Like Elijah, thinking he was the absolute only one left.
Which objectively wasn't true at all. Trauma-driven isolation deepens discouragement and creates this false sense of total powerlessness.
It becomes an echo chamber of your own worst fears.
It really does.
So what does this all mean for how we end up in that cave to begin with? The manual argues that to understand the exhaustion, we really have to trace the trauma back to its absolute root.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Because I've always thought of trauma as coming from these massive, dramatic, explosive events. Car crashes, wars, sudden horrific losses.
Right, the big visible things.
Yeah. But Dr. Rodgers argues it often starts much quieter than that. It starts with chronic, agonizing waiting.
The long, quiet trauma. The study guide introduces this concept of the Isaac complex, and it looks really closely at the biblical story of Abraham and Sarah.
Now, traditionally, if you grew up hearing this story, the focus is always on Mount Moriah.
The dramatic, terrifying moment where Abraham is tested and nearly sacrifices their son, Isaac.
But the teaching transcript points out that Sarah's first true trauma wasn't that massive event on the mountain.
No, it was 90 years of barrenness.
90 years. Decades of compounding, silent waiting. 90 years of hoping and being disappointed every single month.
That takes an unimaginable toll.
It really does. And the affirmations actually highlight Proverbs 13.12, which says, "Hope deferred makes the heart sick."
And when you dig into the original Hebrew words here, it completely changes the tone.
It goes from a poetic metaphor to a literal medical reality.
Exactly. The word for sick is shala, which literally means to become weak or emotionally depleted.
And the word associated with barrenness is akor, meaning uprooted from one's purpose.
It is so essential to understand that this wasn't just a biological delay for Sarah. It became a deep, profound identity wound.
Because when hope is repeatedly deferred, year after year, your nervous system adapts to protect you.
It learns to brace for disappointment instead of expecting a breakthrough.
Because hoping simply hurts too much.
Right.
Yeah.
Your body literally learns to stop expecting good things as a physical defense mechanism.
It is like holding your breath for a lifetime. Your body physically rewires itself to just expect the worst.
It's an adaptation.
And I have to admit, when I first read the next part of the study guide, I was a little skeptical, but it is a staggering piece of evidence.
It's the part about Keturah?
Yes. The author brings up the fact that later in life, after Sarah passes away, Abraham remarries a woman named Keturah.
And he has 6 more sons.
6.
Which is a profound piece of historical and biological evidence. It proves Abraham was perfectly fertile.
So Sarah was the one carrying the biological burden of the barrenness.
Yes. And Dr. Rodgers explains this through the HPA axis.
Okay, let's break that down.
Yeah. To explain that simply, the HPA axis is your body's central stress response system. It stands for the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
That's a mouthful.
It is, yeah. But just think of it as the communication line between your brain and your adrenal glands.
So when your brain perceives a threat, it tells the adrenals to pump out stress hormones.
Correct. But when you are under chronic stress like decades of anticipatory grief and identity erosion, your HPA axis gets stuck in the on position.
Like the smoke detector again.
Exactly. Your body believes it is in a perpetual war zone. And from a purely biological standpoint, when an organism believes it is fighting for its life, it shuts down all non-essential functions.
So it deprioritizes things like digestion, immune response.
And especially reproduction. It wasn't a divine curse. It was biology reacting to profound embodied trauma.
Her body literally said it is not safe to bring a child into this much stress.
That is exactly what her body concluded.
Wow. That completely reframes the entire narrative. But when that chronic pain of waiting isn't processed, the study guide says it mutates.
It doesn't just go away.
No, it spills over onto everyone around you. And that brings us to what Dr. Rodgers calls comparison trauma.
Because Sarah eventually gets desperate to, quote unquote, help God fulfill the promise.
which leads to her servant Hagar conceiving a child with Abraham instead.
And when Hagar conceives, Sarah internalizes it as a massive personal failure.
The Hebrew word used in the text to describe how Sarah feels is kolal, right?
Us, kolal. She feels despised, insignificant, of little account.
And what does she do? She lashes out at Hagar. She becomes physically and emotionally abusive.
This is classic trauma spillover. Unprocessed envy and grief become weaponized. When we don't heal our own pain, we inevitably wound others.
And we see that today all the time.
Oh, everywhere.
Think about the office environment. Someone gets passed over for a promotion for 5 years, and the bitterness just makes them completely toxic to the new hire who just got promoted.
It's the exact same psychological dynamic.
So then finally, the promise is fulfilled. Isaac is born. But because Sarah never healed the root wound, Isaac becomes more than just a much-wanted son.
He becomes her vindication.
He is the tangible proof to everyone who ever whispered about her that she actually matters.
And the webinar issues a severe, very direct warning about this exact dynamic.
The danger of giving a person too much weight.
Exactly. Giving a person or a career goal or even an answered prayer a weight. The Hebrew word is kabod, which means a heavy glory or significance that they were never, ever meant to carry.
Meaning, you're putting the weight of your entire self-worth onto this one external thing.
Precisely. If you place your entire identity, your kabod, on a promise, you are setting yourself up for total collapse if that promise is ever threatened.
Because that thing wasn't built to sustain you.
Right. You are demanding that a gift, whether it's a child, a spouse, or a business success, heal a wound that only internal work and God can heal.
No human being can carry the weight of being your savior.
They will always crumble under that weight.
And you can really see this tension in how Sarah laughs. The teaching transcript breaks down the concept of laughter, the Hebrew word sachak, into 3 distinct stages.
This part is brilliant.
It blew my mind. So stage 1 is cynical laughter. That is Sarah laughing behind the tent flap when the angels say she'll have a baby at 90 years old.
It is a pure defense mechanism.
It's the laugh of someone protecting herself from the danger of hoping again.
Then comes stage 2, which is vindicated laughter. This is when Isaac is finally born.
She celebrates, but there is this sharp defensive edge to it.
Yes, she says, "Who'd have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children?" She is joyful, yes, but she is primarily addressing her critics.
She is still defensively trying to prove her worth to the doubters. The residue of shame is still heavily present.
It is completely dictating her joy.
Now, I really struggled with this part because, honestly, isn't it really satisfying to prove people wrong?
Sure it is. It feels great in the moment.
But reading it this way, are we subconsciously using our victories as weapons?
Often, yes.
Like, when you finally buy that house or get that big title, are you celebrating just to throw your success in the face of people who doubted you, rather than actually enjoying the blessing for what it is?
That is exactly the trap of stage 2 laughter. It keeps you forever tied to the people who hurt you.
You are still letting them control the narrative.
Right. Which is why Dr. Rodgers emphasizes the absolute necessity of stage 3, which is healed laughter.
So what does healed laughter look like?
Healed laughter is pure celebration. It is freedom, rest, and joy without any need to defend or prove anything to anyone.
It's enjoying the thing simply because it's good.
Yes. Sadly, the materials note that Sarah likely never reached stage 3.
Because that underlying identity wound, that trauma from the waiting, was never fully healed.
And because it wasn't healed, the trauma transferred directly to the next generation.
Which brings us back to the mountain, to Mount Moriah, and what the webinar calls the unpreached cost of the altar.
This is a perspective we rarely hear.
We always celebrate Genesis 22. You know, the binding of Isaac, the ram caught in the thicket, the ultimate survival.
The triumph-only theology.
Exactly. But we completely ignore the very next chapter, Genesis 23.
Genesis 23 records Sarah's death immediately following the traumatic event on the mountain.
And the teaching transcript proposes this fascinating medical and psychological perspective.
Her body, which had already endured 90 years of compounding trauma and allostatic load.
Wait, what is allostatic load?
It is the physical wear and tear on the body from chronic stress. Her body simply could not hold the shock of the re-traumatization of nearly losing Isaac.
So the cumulative physical impact of the stress was fatal.
Yes. The breakthrough event still left massive emotional and physical fallout.
And the fallout on Isaac himself is just wild to read about. On the mountain, Isaac asks his father one single question. He says, Where's the lamb?
And after Abraham gives a very vague answer that God will provide, Isaac falls completely silent.
He doesn't fight his dad. He doesn't run away. He doesn't speak.
Right, and historically, theologians have praised this. They call it perfect obedience.
But through a trauma-informed lens.
This is not necessarily a picture of bold, active faith. It is a classic freeze and fawn trauma response.
Okay, let's explain freeze and fawn for the listener, because we hear about fight or flight all the time, but not this.
Right. So when your nervous system is overwhelmed by a massive threat and it calculates that you cannot possibly win a fight and you cannot run away fast enough.
You just freeze.
You freeze. Your body immobilizes you to survive.
Yeah.
And the fawn aspect is an acute survival tactic where you immediately try to please or appease the aggressor to avoid getting hurt.
It is learned helplessness.
Yes, it is compliance, but it is compliance without actual consent.
That is terrifying. It completely flips the script. We've always been told Isaac's silence was this perfect, faithful submission.
But looking at it through the lens of nervous system regulation, it's his body shutting down just to survive the horrific moment.
He literally lost his voice.
He did. The biblical text records no further words from Isaac on that mountain.
And because he never processed this severe trauma, it mutates yet again in his adult life.
Trauma always demands an outlet.
When Isaac marries Rebekah, the scriptures note a very peculiar detail. He brings her into his dead mother's tent.
He was seeking comfort rather than establishing a true, independent covenant partnership with his wife.
He is a son still deeply mourning his mother, bringing his new wife into an emotionally crowded space.
And his trauma-induced passivity, that same freeze response making him avoid conflict at all costs, forces Rebekah into a controlling role.
Because somebody has to lead the family.
Exactly. So she steps in and manipulates. And that dynamic totally fractures the family, leading directly to the toxic favoritism between their twin sons, Esau and Jacob.
It is a perfect ancient illustration of epigenetics and intergenerational trauma.
It really is textbook.
Let's break down epigenetics, because that's a big buzzword right now, but it's important to get it right.
Simply put, epigenetics is the study of how your behaviors and your environment can cause changes that affect the way your genes work.
So it doesn't change your actual DNA code.
No, the code stays the same, but it changes how your body reads that code.
Okay, so how does that work in practice?
Imagine your DNA is a massive instruction manual. Trauma acts like a neon highlighter, emphasizing certain instructions like always be on high alert, and crossing out others like relax and digest.
Wow.
And those highlighted instructions, those epigenetic markers, can actually be passed down to your children.
So the physical binding of Isaac on the altar becomes an emotional binding that Isaac inadvertently passes down to his sons.
Exactly. The dysfunction adapts to the new generation, but it doesn't disappear. It continues until someone intentionally decides to stop it.
Which is exactly what the 4-week study guide is designed to do.
To give you the tools to stop it.
Right. How do we actually stop the bleeding? Dr. Rodgers provides a very specific pathway to break the cycle. She says the ultimate goal is to become the Joseph of your lineage.
Joseph is such a great example here.
He was sold into slavery by his own brothers and eventually gains immense power in Egypt.
He could have destroyed them.
He could have. Instead, he says, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. He chooses forgiveness and provision over revenge.
He literally says, the trauma stops here.
And to become that cycle breaker, the webinar outlines a 5-step healing pathway.
But we should note, this isn't just about reading a book. It's about active, really intentional work.
So step 1 is name the cost.
You have to stop spiritualizing the pain away.
Acknowledge what the obedience or the toxic workplace or the bad relationship actually took from you. Don't put a shiny bow on a pile of garbage.
Which leads right into step 2, grieve the loss.
Lament is incredibly biblical, but we avoid it because it makes us uncomfortable.
We want to rush to the victory.
But the Psalms are full of people screaming at the sky. Being emotionally honest with God or with yourself is not a lack of faith. It is the definition of a real, authentic relationship.
Exactly. Then we have step 3, separate the test from the trauma.
This is so vital for anyone struggling with their faith after a hardship.
God may test your character or your faith, but it is the conditions of a fallen, chaotic world or the free will actions of broken people that traumatize you.
Right. God is the healer of the trauma, not the architect of the abuse. Conflating the two just keeps people stuck in anger.
That distinction changes everything.
Then step 4, invite God into the memory. Go back to that moment of acute pain and ask where he was.
And finally, step 5, and this is where the rubber really meets the road. Do the work.
The guide explicitly mentions going to therapy, getting counseling, and specifically doing EMDR.
Yes, EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
For those unfamiliar, how does that actually work?
It's a specialized psychotherapy designed to alleviate the distress associated with traumatic memories. When you experience trauma, the memory can get stuck in that emotional, amygdala-driven part of your brain we talked about earlier.
So it feels like the danger is still happening right now.
Yes, the body doesn't know it's in the past. EMDR uses bilateral stimulation like tracking the therapist's finger side to side with your eyes to help the brain reprocess that memory.
So it physically engages the brain.
Exactly. It essentially takes the memory out of the present danger folder and files it away properly in the past events folder.
The memory remains, but the visceral, physiological panic attached to it is removed.
It physically rewires the brain,
And that leads directly into the daily healing affirmations provided in the materials.
which are so important to pair with the therapy.
Because these aren't just empty, toxic positivity catchphrases you say in the mirror. They are strategic cognitive tools to rewire a traumatized belief system.
Things like, I am not defined by my delay.
Or, someone else's blessing does not diminish mine.
And crucially, my worth is not tied to my accomplishments.
It is about changing that epigenetic highlighting we talked about earlier.
Replacing the trauma-informed instructions with healing-informed ones.
And this is the beautiful, both-hand theology that Dr. Rodgers champions throughout all these sources. You can absolutely believe God is faithful, and D, admit that you need to go to therapy every Tuesday.
Absolutely.
You can believe in supernatural miracles, and D, know that your nervous system needs scientific help regulating. The two aren't mutually exclusive at all.
You don't have to choose between having deep faith and taking care of your mental health.
If we synthesize the core message of all these materials, it comes down to this single, profound idea, right?
Yes. The ram stopped the sacrifice, but healing stops the repetition. Deliverance might pull you out of the fire, it might get you off the mountain alive, but healing is what treats the third-degree burns.
Wow.
Healing is what ensures you don't pass those exact same scars down to your children or project your unhealed wounds onto your coworkers, your partner, and everyone around you.
I want to leave you with this thought as we wrap up today's deep dive. Think about your own life right now. Look at the promises you're waiting for or the victories you've already won.
Really examine them.
Are you operating out of vindicated laughter? Are you still exhausting yourself, running on pure cortisol, trying to prove your worth to people who doubted you 5 years ago?
What would it look like for you to lay down the armor?
To stop just surviving the car crash and finally allow yourself the time, the grace, and the therapy to actually heal.